Hey everyone, so today we're going to do Explore Learning. So I finally found a good spot to do it. I don't know why I kept looking at so many other places when Gizmo had it. It was already here, so I don't know what I was thinking. But anyways, so you're just going to log in. As a reminder, you got to use the class code, okay? So the class code is on the Google Classroom, so just look that up. It'll be easy. It will say, do you want to be in Mr. Howey's class? You say, yeah, that's fine. If you have an account, great, log in. If you don't, that's fine. You can make an account. So just put it in. Don't put in my name. I'll be super fake. They don't need my email. My name will be super fake Howey, whatever. Doesn't matter. Done. Okay, and we're going to go to growing plants. So you're going to launch that one. Okay, so everything I talked about doing before the break is here. It's great. It's here. So you get your chance to choose your type of plant. So tomato, bean, turnip. And let's look at the things you're allowed to actually change. Oh, it has little sounds too. Of course it does. Okay. So actually, let me turn the sounds off. Okay, so you get your chance to, you could change the amount of water. So I could say this one's at 100, this one's 50, this one's 0. You could run it. That could be your experiment. So no longer do we have to do this lab over weeks and weeks and weeks. It can all be done here. Okay. I think the craziest thing about this when I ran it a few times was realizing that I don't know how they programmed this or how they did it, but every time you run it, you get slightly different numbers, okay? So that's what's really fascinating to me. Also, what's fascinating is that the height here matches, but the mass is different, which is like weird and interesting. So maybe you think about that when you're collecting your data. What's also really cool is that it tells you all of this data here, and then it even has this export data button, which is kind of fancy. I don't know if you'll find that useful, but we can look at this over a 50-day period and make a comparison. So you can be comparing things like plant height. You can do that as a bar graph or a line graph. Line graph makes way more sense, right? Or you can do plant mass. So you could look at the plant mass as a line graph and it will tell you. So it also reminds you what your things were. So bean plant, bean, bean. 3 lights, 3 lights, 3 lights. Amount of water. They all had water and soil, so that's fine. But yeah, I think this is a really good sort of quick, very, very quick, very simplified version of the plant lab that we would do. I looked into another one, as you probably saw before, if I do my editing right, of a different video that was just like, or a different app. But it was just really hard to use and I didn't figure it out. It was hard. So you can try other plants. So we clear the pots. So you could do your lights. So you can turn different ones on. You can have it totally dark. So your choice could be no light, 2 lights, 1 light. You know, obviously don't do no lights. Nothing's going to happen. But you could do 1 versus 2 versus 3. And you could do a comparison. Just be smart in terms of keep your control variables, right? Only test one thing at a time, right? So in this test, I could test the lights and I could try them all. Okay, don't be throwing different beans around and half tomato and half bean and half turnip. Obviously, that's madness, okay? That you have your choice of fertilizer. What kind of sucks is that you can't change the concentration of fertilizer. All you can do is compare fertilizer to compost. You could also use compost and fertilizer, which could be interesting, but you'd have to run it a few times if you wanted to do just soil versus fertilizer and compost. Like you could think of all those things to do. So basically this activity you're going to do over the next few weeks. I know I gave this to you pretty late. It's fine. I think it's kind of interesting. There's a lot to play around with. And the reason why it's going to take you a little bit of time is because, why because? Is because you're going to have to run it a few times and you're going to have to make your own data table. Now, I know I just said you could export the data and all of that, right? That's fine. But really, you need to be running this more than once, okay? The reason why you need to do it more than once is, as I said before, so let me try to see if I can replicate it. So if you have a bunch of these light bulbs running, you put the fertilizer into here, we go fertilizer, compost, go compost, turn all the lights on. Okay, so last time when I ran it, I was very surprised that it's not just like some straight up like, oh, if you put these in, it'll automatically be a height of like 50 centimeters at the end. It actually is slightly different every time. So that makes it kind of fascinating in a way, because it's not going to give you the exact same result every time you run it. So getting an average, just like real life, right, you have to get some kind of average. Okay, so in this case, it shows here that compost and fertilizer was slightly lower numbers than just the fertilizer. Okay, so that's interesting. And so if you think about these numbers, kind of put those in your head, 51, 53, 50.8, okay? If you run it again, the numbers will be slightly different. Okay, so you'll probably want to run it a few times, just like we were doing in our experiment in class. I kept telling you like, oh, we're going to use 3 seeds. Every group is going to get 3 seeds. We're going to take the average of 3 seeds. So again, run it 3 times, right? Get your 3 seeds. You see the numbers are slightly different. Look at that. Look at that. Right? So if you only ran this once, you would have had the idea that, oh, very strangely, the compost and fertilizer was lower than this, but now look, 52.8, 51. Like, so you would have a totally different conclusion, right? So when you're gathering your data, it's important, think about collecting it over multiple days. I know we're not growing actual plants, but I really like this activity, because of the randomness, it does kind of replicate what would have happened in real life, in the sense that it's not like perfect every time. So you have to kind of run it a few times to get the sense for like, okay, in general, what is happening. And yeah, you can grab the data from here. You don't need to grab it for every single day. That's probably overkill, right? But you can choose a day. So you might say day 50 or day 40, whatever you care about. Probably day 50 is the easiest comparison. Grab measurements of its mass, grab measurements of its height, make your own table, right? And then basically next week, you'll write a conclusion. Okay, you've already practiced writing an analysis and results section, right, on something totally different. That's fine. I'm not going to make you do a formal like results analysis for this. That's fine. Basically what you're going to do, you're going to make an observations table, because as you can see, this one's not quite going to work because it doesn't have a spot for multiple plants. Okay, so because you have to run this simulation a few times, at least 3 times, I would say, to get numbers that make sense, you really have to run it a few times. Okay, so you're going to be making your own table to do that. And especially this table here doesn't show you height and mass, right? So when we talked about doing our plant experiment before the break, we said, oh, we were going to measure the amount of seeds that germinated, and we were going to also be measuring the plant height, right? So we talked about recording 2 types of measurements, and this experiment lets you have those 2 kinds of measurements. So this simulation assumes that the seeds will germinate, right? But the second thing we're recording is what's the mass and what's the height. Sometimes it's different, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, but that's going to be activity. So this, what we're calling week 3, but I guess week 3 and 4 are kind of a bundle. It's pretty straightforward. You're just going to make a small little data table that includes these things for multiple plants. And then you'll write a small 1-paragraph conclusion that matches your data. So maybe your data talks about how the lamps, or how the number of light bulbs affect it, right? So you could do comparison of that. You could do comparison fertilizer. You could do comparison of amount of water. You could do all kinds of stuff. Okay, maybe you don't want to use the beans. Maybe you're doing all turnips for your experiment. Okay, So the decision is totally yours. You just get to play around with it. Again, what I'm most interested in is helping you with your science writing in the future. So yeah, just make a table, call it like table 1 or table 2 if you think you need 2 tables. I don't know how many tables you think you need. It kind of depends on how you're building your table. And I will give you feedback on that and help you become a better science writer. Okay, sorry it took a little while to get this out. Again, I was trying to find a couple different simulation lab things, and it turns out that Gizmo was the best. So there it is, and have fun with it. Okay, I will talk to you all soon. Bye.